This is just some regular ice, but it's filled with bubbles, and I think it's really ugly. What I want is some beautiful ice that's perfectly clear, and I think I'm going to try making some. To get started, all I need is a regular cooler, and I'll fill it with some warm tap water. I'll bring it up to roughly an inch from the top, and then I can put this entire thing in the freezer. Using a cooler to do this forces the ice to form from the top down. This allows it to freeze without trapping air, and I have to leave it in there for about 36 hours. At this point, it should be good to go, and I can take it out. I'll then flip it upside down, and I'll leave it in the sink for a while. I then pulled away the cooler, and I had a bunch of ice. A lot of it hadn't frozen though, and I carefully got rid of it. At the bottom was a really nice and thick chunk of ice. It's a bit too big though, and I'll have to chop it up. To do this, I apparently just had to make a shallow cut all the way around. Then, when I tap it with a knife and a hammer, it's supposed to make a clean break. However, I think I hit it a bit too hard. This was kind of sad, but I was a lot better with the other cuts, and I was able to chop it into 4 large chunks. I then ran one of them under water to clean it up, and this was what I was left with. It's somehow even better than I thought it would be, and it kind of blows my mind how clear it is. There are some spots with some small bubbles, but it's still really impressive, and I think that it almost looks fake. A few months ago, I made some ice that was perfectly clear, and now I want to turn it into a perfect ball. To do this, I just have to put it on this large chunk of aluminum, and it almost immediately starts melting. Then on top of this, I can slide on the other half, and now I just have to wait. Over the next several minutes, the ice slowly melted, and the 2 parts eventually sealed together. At this point, it should have been done, and when I opened it up, I had a nearly perfect ball of ice. There were of course some small imperfections, but it was still way nicer than I expected. It was super clear, and even though it was just ice, I felt like it was one of my favorite things I've ever made. Within just a few minutes, though, it was already melting, and like everything else in life, all good things must come to an end. A while ago, I made some perfectly clear ice using a cooler, and I thought it was pretty cool. There were a lot of comments, though, that said I could have saved a lot of time and effort by just boiling the water. So, I've decided to test that out, and I'm going to boil some tap water for about 15 minutes. This should really drive out any air that's in there, and maybe prevent it from fogging up as it freezes. When it was done, I let it cool down a bit, and I poured it into an ice cube mold. I also decided to test some boiled distilled water, and as controls, I included unboiled versions of each. I then put it in the freezer, and I took it out a few days later. I was honestly really hoping to see some nice and clear ice, but that wasn't the case. Both of the tap water ones were terrible, and the only somewhat decent one was the boiled distilled water. It still wasn't anywhere close to being clear, though, and they were all really ugly.